Hello, my name is Greg Forster, and I'm with Karam Fellowship. We're here for our latest member spotlight interview. This month with Hon Tony Wong, who teaches at Acts Seminaries at Trinity Western University and at Carey Theological College, both in Canada. Tony, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me here.
Tony, what's going well for you in the classroom these days?
Well, before saying that, let me give everyone a context. I am an adjunct faculty of two schools, and also I am currently a full-time small Canadian Chinese church pastor in Calgary. So for me, when you say what's going on well in my classroom, I will say that haven't been at, have haven't served in congregational ministry for 20 years. I really want to have my classroom experience can connect with actual ministerial settings. Particularly right now, I'm teaching in a Mandarin speaking program, particularly in the Acts seminaries. In this way, I really want to make sure my students are able to learn something that is connected to their world, because quite a number of them are still living in mainland China. So I do not want to just bring some so-called quote unquote Western idea to their world. I want them to have a connections with what they have learned in classroom and make it contextual to their lives. Particularly, I really want to develop their pastoral imagination, that they can think, feel, and behave like a pastors. So therefore, I would say in the classroom, there are two things that I have done I find is quite helpful and useful. Number one, case study discussion, because I'm teaching in the pastoral ministry, leadership, and Christian education area. So you can say that you can lump it into a so-called practical theology department. So in a way, for me, I really want them to think how what they have learned from theories from the books can relate it to actual ministry setting. So I provided several actual ministry case for them to discuss. Of course, the anonymous feature has been in place, so nobody knows who's who in the case, but actually it's a real case. So in that case, I asked the student, sometime I pick an hour just in the classroom to discuss a case, and then asking them to respond, saying that if you are the pastor, if you are the one who served, how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to make sense of it? Through that exercise, I did it almost, if I had taught a course for 13 weeks, I think at least half of those, every other week I have a case. And I actually give a nickname of the pastor. And a pastor name actually, if you say in Chinese, it would be they will laugh at it. But if you translate it literally, it means the name is looks fake, but it's real. The parcel is fake, but it's real. So they have to develop and think like that parcel to try to resolve the issue. So in a way, it will help them to come up with a, um, a habit of develop a problem solving solution, and also develop their perspective as a pastor in these case. And the second things uh, I I did it would be a journal writing. It took me a lot of time to mark it, because I asked my student after each class, I asked them to write 1 page to 2 pages on their reflection or about what they have learned, what they have experienced in class, so that they will need to reflect on their life as a Christian. How these courses help them to become a better Christian and help them to become a pastor who can think, feel, and behave better if they actually graduate from the school. So these are two things that actually things that works well.
I've used case studies as well in the classroom. It's a very useful way of making sure that we stay practical. I'm curious about that journaling assignment that you mentioned. Do they turn that in? Do you grade it, or do you just mark that they did it? How does that work in practice?
Well, you know what? That I said it took me a lot of time because when I read it, I responded to them. I'm not just giving a take and then give it A, B, C. I actually make comment, just like a response to them. And I have one time when a student wrote something that really struck my heart. I wrote a poem back to this student. I'm a poet except myself. So I when I read that somehow it struck the core of myself too. I just wrote a short poem to this student, and this student till today was shocked because in her training in the mainland China, teacher were not doing things like that. So that really helping me to develop relationship with them and also not just shaping their mind, but also the conviction and hearts.
That's great. At our Karam Fellowship faculty retreat just a couple months ago, Christina Bieber Lake said, students really want to be seen. And I just thought of that when you mentioned the student who you wrote a poem back to the students. Students want to be seen. They want to know that their professor's taking an interest in them. That's great. I really appreciate your sharing that. I feel like we're already talking about this, but I'm going to move on to my second question, which is what's life-giving for you as an educator?
There are a few things that really are life-giving for me as an educator. Number one is seeing the Holy Spirit to lead the student into the truth about God, themselves, and their community, with much clear sense of calling. What I mean is this. Number one, the calling to become a Christian, recognize their faith, and also be joyful that they're being Christian, and also calling according to be a saint that they can live differently. But finally, I would say the calling to be a servant. I mean servant because not everyone are called to become a pastor, a minister, or missionaries, but God did call us to be someone to do something for Him. Um, when I see students stumbled it and thought through it and made a commitment, it made my life joyful. Particularly, most of my students, actually, I think all of my students, I would say the average age will be 40 plus. So for them, it's already midlife. They need to kind of like rethinking of their lives, and I through the assignment and through the conversation, I kind of trying to helping them to discover what God wants them to be. And believe it or not, that's one. Sometimes the student actually come to me for pastoral counseling. That's great. I mean, sometimes particularly students in mainland China, they may not have access to kind of like a mentoring and kind of counseling, things like that. I become the channel to helping them. That's one thing. And secondly, I would say that seeing both teachers and learner grow in the knowledge which revealed by God. One of the books that really formulate my teaching and learning is the book by Parker Palmer, The Courage to Teach. It's really shaped me, and particularly he had a term called community of truth, which means we gather around a common subject and be guided by shared rules of observation and interpretation that require us to approach the subject with this with in the same way, in a way that means I also has become a learner as well. I am not a content, not the one who give the content, I would say. I always consider myself when I teach in class, I would say I am the person a journeyman who walked through the trip few times. Now I walk with you, but I'm sure that every time I walk, I will see something that is new to me as well. And why can I see it? Because of you guys bring a new perspective for me to see that. So it's helpful. That's one thing. And second thing would be it's part of God plans to shape others to be faithful following Christ in their calling. I think that's something that really bring my joy. I think you can see in my previous example. I think if God's calling me to serve, I'm I am not teaching a subject. I'm teaching a person and helping the person to grow. And finally, I would say that through this experience, I myself, I have grown in competency. That's not hard to understand because once I need to walk through the material, learning method, I am becoming more competent in the way to teach and the content I want to teach. But at the same time, it should be a I have grown in humility too because it helped me to know that I did not know everything and anything. Sometimes my student can bring me to think deeply about it. Particularly recently, I taught a course in pastoral counseling, and they asked me from a lot of questions. Particularly some of those grew up in the mainland China, they have went through some of the difficulties, and I never thought about it. And I said, okay, as a pastor, as someone who teach pastoral counseling, how can I helping them to foster some kind of pastoral care in their context? Well, maybe in North America, we have a lot of resources. If they don't have these resources, what shall I do? That's forced me to learn to help and also forced me to humble because I didn't know everything. And finally, it's a sense of stewardship. I think is important because it just brings me to the point that I'm growing. I'm not owning the knowledge, the experience. I am a steward to God calling me to give it to others. So I think that's three things that really help. Really, I thought it's giving me life as an educator.
I resonate so strongly with all of those testimonies. The name of Karam Fellowship, Karam is Hebrew for tending vineyards, and that gives our sense of stewardship, that as educators, we are stewarding the vineyard of the Lord by helping Christians to become learners. I especially appreciate your call to humility, that in teaching, there's this sense very often that it's our job to know everything, that we have to pretend we know everything because as the teacher, we're supposed to know everything. And it leads to what's called imposter syndrome, where we have this anxiety because the world will find out that I don't know everything, and that'll be a disaster. I won't be able to teach anymore. I'll lose the respect of my students and colleagues. I think we need to let go of that. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you my last question. What would you like to see happen next in theological education?
Okay, I stand in a position because I have a position. Okay, I stand in a position as an active minister who's serving the small churches, and as an adjunct faculty. It's a very interesting intersection, I would say. For me, what I want to see is this. I hope that theological education will help to develop a habit of ongoing learning and formation posture in the lives of students who will be ministered to serve. Why I'm saying this? Because having in the ministry for 20 years as a pastor, serving in mid-sized, small and large churches in my life, in urban area and in suburban area. The only area I haven't been able to serve is a rural. I don't see at least there's a Chinese church in Canada in a rural area at this point. But through these experiences, just helping me to see that I need to grow, I need to learn because once you jump into different learning, different scenarios in pastoral situation, I got to learn and I got to be able to shaped by God. And sometimes I reflect upon my theological education. There's a sense that, oh, after 3 years we're done. And I said, no, not at all. After my first pastorate for 2 years, I already know that, oh, I already feeling the emptiness. I need to learn something. I need to grow. However, somehow when I reflect upon the pedagogies and also the curriculum development of theological school, we have a sense that we want to develop students that, oh, you're done, you're finished, you can go and do anything. But it's not the case. And at the end, students are, at least some parts are very frustrated and say, the things I learned in the seminary didn't work, didn't help, and I'm just go somewhere else to learn, which is I can understand. And sometimes some pastors will be, oh, if this is the case, just being idle in learning. But I would say a true learning is contextual when we come to the point that we realize we need to learn. But I would say when we design our curriculum and learning experience, are we actually promoting a way of learning? I'll just give you an example. Um, if I learning Greek or Hebrew, nothing against that, which is good. But sometimes when I'm thinking of my time I'm learning Greek, I will say that somehow it's a disconnect so that Greek becomes something that is useless to me somehow. But this is the miseducative because right now I still using not of course my Greek is not as good, maybe a little rustic, but I still use it because somehow I see the value. But that's it's not I learned from the school. It's just the situation when I need to go to deeper study. I need to learn. So somehow some same thing like that. We somehow when we develop a learn our the teaching and learning method, and I think about it like writing a 30 pages of academic paper. Don't get me wrong. I did that too. I need to do it when I get my PhD for that. But when I ponder about it, I ask myself, if 10 students walk into the classroom, how many of those will end up being a PhD and doing research? Probably if I have one, I'm already very happy about it. Probably seven or six of them will be served in the local church with different capacities. Thinking in that line, and particularly most of them may serve in a small church. If the statistics shows that 70% of the churches in North America are small churches, how can I prepare the student to come to this situation and grow and flourish? And that is my struggle when I hope to see, because sometimes I graduated with my MDiv in educational studies, which is very helpful, help me to become see the context more clearly because it's education need to be contextual. But sometimes when I talk to other pastors, they feel stuck because they feel the train already have a certain type of mentality or certain type of structure. You can fit in like a screw, a screw, but not as a person that they can grow. I'm not sure whether I'm clear about it, but at least this is my thought on that.
No, I think that's very clear and I really appreciate it. I especially appreciate your highlighting that we need to adjust curriculum and pedagogy toward helping people become lifelong learners. I think almost every school says we want our students to become lifelong learners, but the curriculum and pedagogy that we have inherited from previous generations were developed under models that were based on information transfer and skills development. Again, like you said, that's good and we need to have it. But they were not developed with a focus on mentoring and formation toward lifelong learning and discipleship. Tony, thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.